"Do you think I still deserve to be happy?" asked the girl with Down syndrome on the blind date. The single father was shocked, but his answer changed everything forever. A story of true love that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and comment on where you are watching from. The March rain pattered against the windows of the small cafe Brewed Awakenings in Brooklyn, creating a melancholic melody that mingled with the buzz of conversations and the aroma of fresh coffee. It was a typical afternoon in New York, where the grey sky seemed to mirror the feelings of those seeking refuge at the cozy tables of the establishment. Among the hanging plants and the paintings of local artists that adorned the exposed brick walls, a question was about to change 2 lives forever. Emily Johnson, 25, nervously adjusted the strap of her crochet bag made by her grandmother, a gift she always carried as a protective talisman. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a floral blouse that highlighted her almond-shaped, bright and expressive eyes. The Down syndrome she had carried since birth had never diminished the special glow she radiated, but at that moment, anxiety made her hands tremble slightly as she fiddled with the napkin on the table. Across the small, rustic wooden table, David Smith, a 35-year-old man with brown hair already showing some grey at the temples, discreetly observed the young woman in front of him. His blue eyes, usually cold and calculating from years of experience in the corporate world, seemed confused at that moment. Dressed in a light blue dress shirt and jeans, an attempt to appear more casual for the date, he felt completely out of place. "Do you think I still deserve to be happy?" The question slipped from Emily's lips like a whisper filled with hope and fear, echoing among the tables of the cafe and piercing directly into David's heart. She had gathered all her courage to ask that question after days of mentally rehearsing what she would say on this date. David felt as if someone had squeezed his chest tightly. That simple question carried a weight he hadn't expected. His co-workers at Horizon Engineering had set up this meeting as a cruel prank, betting among themselves that he would run away after the first few minutes. Let's see if the serious David can handle an afternoon with the special girl from the bakery. They had maliciously laughed during the previous Friday's happy hour. "Why do you ask that?" David replied, his voice softer than he intended, as he studied Emily's sincere face. There was something about this young woman that disarmed all his defenses, something that made him momentarily forget the malicious laughter of his colleagues. Emily lowered her eyes, fiddling with the strap of her bag. "It's just that everyone always says that people like me can't have a normal life, that we don't deserve to love and be truly loved." Her words came out heavy with a deep pain, the result of years of hearing prejudiced comments and facing looks of pity or disdain. The engineer felt a pang in his stomach. He himself had arrived there with prejudices, expecting to find someone incapable of maintaining an adult conversation. "And do you believe that?" he asked, genuinely curious now. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Emily sighed, finally raising her gaze to meet his eyes. "My first boyfriend, Mark, said he loved me. We dated for 6 months, and I thought I had finally found someone who saw me as a real woman, not as a pity case." Her voice slightly choked. "But when I told him about my syndrome, he disappeared. Literally. He even changed his phone number." David felt an inexplicable anger towards that Mark he had never met. "What an idiot," he murmured, surprised by his own reaction. Emily smiled for the first time since she arrived at the cafe, a shy but genuine smile. "My mum always says he didn't deserve me anyway, that when the right person comes along they will love me just as I am." She paused, watching the rain trickle down the window. "But sometimes I wonder if that person really exists, you know." "Tell me about yourself," David asked, surprised by his own interest. "What do you do? What are your dreams?" Emily's eyes lit up instantly. "I work at Sweet Treats Bakery for 3 years. I started as an assistant, but now I take care of the dessert section in the late afternoon. I love making brownies. Everyone in the neighborhood says mine are the best in the area." There was a genuine pride in her voice that touched David deeply. "And your other dreams?" he insisted, picking up his coffee cup and realizing he had completely forgotten his initial prejudices. "I want to have a family," Emily replied without hesitation. "I want to have kids, take care of a home, plant a big garden with roses and jasmine. I love plants. I have a small garden in my parents' backyard. My grandmother taught me that plants respond to care, just like people." David nodded, remembering his late wife, Lisa, who shared the same passion for gardening. "Your grandmother was wise," he commented softly. "And you? What's your story?" Emily asked, leaning slightly forward, showing genuine interest. David hesitated for a moment. Should he tell her about Lily, about Lisa, about the loneliness he had carried for 2 years? "I lost my wife 2 years ago. Cancer. I have an 8-year-old daughter, Lily. It's just the two of us now." Emily's expression filled with compassion. "That must be very difficult, raising a girl alone." "It is," David admitted, surprised by his own openness. "Lily is everything to me, but sometimes I feel like I'm not enough, that she needs a female presence, someone who understands certain things that I don't understand, I'm sure." "You're a wonderful father," Emily said with conviction. "A child just needs true love, the rest we learn along the way." They talked for over 2 hours, the rain gradually easing as words flowed between them. Emily showed pictures of her garden on her phone. Small, neatly organized flower beds, red roses she had planted in honor of her grandmother, basil she used to season the cherry tomatoes she grew. David saw in her eyes the same sparkle that Lisa had when caring for her orchids, the same loving dedication that transformed plants into extensions of the soul. When they finally stood up to leave, the sun was beginning to peek through the clouds, creating golden reflections in the puddles on the sidewalk. David found himself not wanting that afternoon to end, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Emily," he said as they walked toward her bus stop, "you definitely deserve to be happy, very happy." She stopped and looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "Do you really believe that?" "I do," David replied with a certainty that surprised him. "And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you." When Emily's bus arrived, she turned to him one last time. "Would you like to see my garden someday? I make a famous brownie in the neighborhood." David smiled, a genuine smile he hadn't given in months. "I would love to, and I'm sure Lily would also really like to meet you." As the bus pulled away and Emily waved from the window, David stood there for a few minutes, watching the afternoon that had changed something fundamental within him. For the first time in 2 years, he felt that maybe he also deserved a second chance at happiness. The next morning, David woke up with a strange feeling in his chest, a mix of guilt and anticipation that kept him restless throughout his morning shower. While preparing breakfast for Lily, his mind kept drifting back to their conversation from the day before. How could he explain to an 8-year-old that her father had met someone special, but that this person was different from what society considered normal? "Dad, you're burning the toast," Lily warned, interrupting his daydreams. The girl, a female version of David with the same piercing blue eyes, watched her father with curiosity. Her blonde hair reached her shoulders, and she wore the school uniform, a white blouse and navy blue skirt from St. Mary's Academy on the Upper East Side. "Sorry, Princess," David murmured, tossing the charred toast in the trash and grabbing another slice of bread. Dad was thinking. "Thinking about what?" Lily asked, climbing onto the stool to reach the jar of jam on the high shelf. Since her mother's passing, she had developed an early independence that sometimes worried David. "About someone I met yesterday," he replied honestly, watching his daughter's reaction. Lily's eyes lit up. "A girlfriend?" she asked with the typical innocence of children, licking the jam off the spoon. David nearly choked on his coffee. "No, no, it's not like that. It's a friend. She works at a bakery and makes delicious brownies." "Is she pretty?" Lily continued to probe, now even more interested. "She has a really beautiful smile," David admitted, feeling his cheeks flush slightly. "And she has a garden full of flowers." "Just like Mom had," Lily exclaimed, and David felt his heart tighten. Lisa had left behind a garden of orchids that he had never managed to maintain. All the plants had died in the first months after her departure, as if they too were in mourning. "Similar, yes," he agreed softly. "Maybe one day you can meet her." As Lily finished her breakfast, David checked his messages on his phone. There was a work group chat with several messages about the meeting from the previous afternoon. Mark Johnson, the project manager, had written, "So, David, did you manage to last the whole afternoon? I bet you made up an excuse and bailed in 10 minutes." David typed and deleted several responses, finally opting not to reply at all. How could he explain to those men that the afternoon had been one of the most pleasant he had in years? How could he tell them that Emily had an emotional intelligence that most of them lacked? After dropping Lily off at school, David drove to the construction company's office, located in a commercial building in Brooklyn. The heavy Tuesday morning traffic gave him time to think. Should he reach out to Emily again? How would his colleagues react if they knew he was genuinely interested in getting to know her better? At the office, a modern environment with glass tables and white walls decorated with photos of the company's projects. David tried to focus on work, but his mind kept wandering. During the lunch break, he made an impulsive decision that surprised him. Sweet Treats Bakery was located on Frédéric Coutinho Street, just a 15-minute drive from the office. It was a traditional establishment in the neighborhood, with a yellow facade and a display case full of breads and pastries that attracted a constant line of customers. The smell of fresh bread filled his nostrils as soon as he opened the door, bringing back memories of his childhood when his grandmother took him to buy bread at the bakery in Maplewood. Emily was behind the counter, arranging brownies in small, colorful paper cups. She wore the bakery's uniform, a white t-shirt with the embroidered logo and a light blue apron, and had her hair tied back in a disposable cap. When she saw him enter, her eyes lit up with genuine joy that made David's heart race. "David, what a nice surprise!" she exclaimed, wiping her hands on her apron before greeting him. "What are you doing here?" "I work nearby," he explained, suddenly feeling shy. "I thought I'd stop by to see how you were doing." "How sweet!" Emily smiled, and David noticed how her smile lit up her entire face. "Want to try my brownies? I made some passion fruit ones today that turned out delicious." She picked up one of the treats and offered it to David, who put it in his mouth and was genuinely surprised by the flavor. The brownie melted in his mouth with a perfect balance between sweetness and the tartness of the passion fruit. "Wow, Emily! This is amazing!" "Secret recipe from my grandmother," she confessed proudly. "She taught me that the secret is in getting the sweetened condensed milk just right and adding a pinch of salt." At that moment, the bakery owner approached, Mr. Johnson, a man in his 60s, bold and plump, with a grey mustache and a fatherly smile. "Who is this young man, Emily?" he asked in a protective tone. "This is David, Mr. Johnson. He's an engineer and has an 8-year-old daughter," Emily introduced enthusiastically, and David noticed how she remembered details from their previous conversation. "An engineer, huh?" Mr. Johnson sized him up. "And what does an engineer want in my bakery?" "To taste the best brownies in town, it seems," David replied diplomatically, extending his hand to shake the older man's hand. Mr. Johnson shook his hand firmly, a grip testing the character of the visitor. "Emily is like a daughter to me," he said seriously. She has worked here since she was 22 and has never given me a day of headache. She's the most dedicated employee I've ever had." "Mr. Johnson, stop," Emily protested, blushing. "It's true, dear. You arrive here at 5 in the morning to organize the suites, stay late when needed, and never complain about anything." The man turned to David again. "If you're interested in my Emily, it's best that your intentions are serious." David felt the weight of those words and the protective gaze of the older man. "I just met Emily yesterday, but I can assure you that I have the utmost respect for her." "Good," Mr. Johnson nodded. "Emily, you can take the young man to see your little sweet corner in the back. But leave the door open," he added with a half-serious, half-joking tone. Emily led David to a small area in the back of the bakery where she prepared her special treats. It was an organized and clean space, with molds of different sizes, shiny pots and labeled jars of ingredients. On the walls, she had pinned some photos of her creations and a calendar with notes about special orders. "This is where the magic happens," she said, lovingly running her hand over the marble countertop. "I make traditional brownies, passion fruit, lemon, coffee, and I also make some famous coconut treats that everyone in the neighborhood loves." "Did you learn everything by yourself?" David asked, impressed with the organization and professionalism of the space. "My grandmother taught me the basics, but I learned and created new recipes. There's a lady from the neighborhood, Ms. Thompson, who orders sweets for her grandchildren's birthday parties. And there's also the folks from the office on the corner who always order a tray on Fridays." David noticed a folder with handwritten notes about the orders and was impressed with Emily's organization. She kept track of dates, quantities, favorite flavors of regular customers, and even notes about food allergies. "Emily, can I ask you a somewhat personal question?" David hesitated. "Of course," she replied, organizing some molds. How do you deal with people who treat you differently?" "Because of your condition, because I see that you are incredibly capable and intelligent, but I imagine not everyone recognizes that right away." Emily stopped what she was doing and looked at him seriously. "At first, it was very difficult. I cried a lot, especially when people spoke to me as if I were a little child, or when they pretended not to hear me." She sighed. "But my mom always told me that I can't control how people see me, only how I react to them." "Your mom is wise," David commented. "She's my hero," Emily smiled. "She and my dad never treated me as if I were different at home. They always gave me responsibilities and taught me to be independent. That's why today I can work, manage my money, and have my dreams." At that moment, David realized he was in the presence of an extraordinary person. Emily was not just a young woman with Down syndrome. She was a strong, determined woman full of life who had turned challenges into opportunities for growth. "Would you like to have lunch with me tomorrow?" The question slipped out before David could think it through. Emily smiled, but hesitated. "Are you sure? Won't you feel awkward if someone from your work sees us together?" The question hit David like a punch in the stomach. She had a reason to question. He was asking himself the same thing. "Emily, I'm not ashamed to be with you. In fact, I would feel honored." "Then yes," she replied, her smile lighting up her entire face again. "I would love to have lunch with you." The Wednesday lunch took place at a small self-service restaurant on Main Street, a bustling place where the noise of conversations and the hustle and bustle of waiters created a relaxed atmosphere. David had deliberately chosen a public and democratic spot where people from all social classes mingled during lunchtime. He wanted Emily to feel comfortable, away from the judgmental gazes of more elitist environments. Emily arrived promptly at 12:30, wearing an aqua green blouse that highlighted her eyes and simple jeans. Her hair was down, softly framing her face, and she carried a small brown leather bag that David would later discover was a graduation gift from the administrative assistant course she completed the previous year. "You seem nervous," Emily observed, as soon as they sat down, with that keen perception that David was learning to admire in her. "A little," he admitted, fiddling with the napkin. It had been a long time since I had lunch with a woman who wasn't a co-worker." Emily tilted her head, studying him. "Your wife passed away 2 years ago, you said. What was she like?" The question was direct, but not intrusive. There was genuine curiosity in her voice, without traces of jealousy or discomfort. David sighed, looking out the window where the frantic movement of the city contrasted with the tranquility he felt beside Emily. "Lisa was, how can I say, she was my best friend," he began, his voice heavy with nostalgia. "We met in college. She studied biology and dreamed of being a researcher. She had a passion for plants that I never quite understood until she explained to me that each one had its own personality." "She took care of orchids, didn't she?" Emily asked softly. "How do you know?" David was surprised. "Yesterday you mentioned that I had the same sparkle in my eyes that your wife had when she tended to her plants. And orchids are flowers that need a lot of care and patience." Emily smiled. "My grandmother always said that those who care for orchids have a sensitive soul." David was impressed by her memory and sensitivity. "Lisa would spend hours in the garden talking to the plants. I used to tease her, saying she was going crazy. Now I would give anything to hear her talking to the flowers again." "And how did you find out she was sick?" Emily asked, her hand instinctively moving toward his across the table, but stopping halfway, respecting the still undefined boundaries between them. "It was after Lily was born. Lisa was always tired, but we thought it was normal, just a first-time mum thing. When Lily was 6 months old, Lisa collapsed in the garden. Tests showed she had advanced cancer." David's voice grew hoarse. "The doctors said that the pregnancy might have accelerated the process, but she might have already had the disease before." Emily finally completed the movement, covering his hand with hers. Her fingers were small and warm, and the simple touch brought unexpected comfort to David. "Did she have time to see Lily grow a little?" 2 years. 2 years of treatments, hopes, relapses." David took a deep breath. "The worst part wasn't seeing her go. The worst part was explaining to a 6-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming home." "And how did Lily react?" "She spent months waiting for Mommy to come back. Every night she would ask when Mommy was coming out of the hospital, until one day she stopped asking, and that was even scarier." David looked at Emily. "Since then, it's just been the two of us. I tried a few times to date other women, but it always felt forced, like I was betraying Lisa's memory." Emily remained silent for a few moments, absorbing what she had heard. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "David, I think Lisa would want you to be happy again. Mothers want the people they love to be happy even after they're gone." The simplicity and wisdom of those words touched David deeply. "How can you be so sure?" "Because that's what I would want if I were in her place," Emily replied without hesitation. "If I truly loved someone, I would want them to find love again, for my daughter to have someone to care for her with affection." In that moment, David understood that he was in front of a woman with a rare emotional maturity that transcended any intellectual limitations that the syndrome might represent. Emily had touched on the core of the issue that had tormented him for 2 years, with a clarity that none of the psychologists he had consulted had managed to achieve. "Now tell me about your family," David asked, wanting to know the roots of this extraordinary person. Emily smiled, her eyes lighting up. "My dad, Antonio, has worked as a doorman in a building in the Upper West Side for 20 years. He leaves home at 5 in the morning and only returns at 7 at night. But he never complained. He always said that work dignifies a person, no matter what you do. And your mom. My mom, Mary, is a house cleaner. She takes care of 4 houses a week and does extra cleaning on weekends when needed. But you know what I admire most about her? Emily paused, pride evident in her voice. She never let anyone treat me badly in front of her. Once, when I was about 15, we were at the supermarket, and the cashier got impatient with me because I was taking too long to count the money. My mom went to the manager and made such a scene that the man even apologized. David smiled, imagining the scene. She sounds like a lioness defending her cub. She really is. But she also taught me to stand up for myself. She would say, "Emily, I won't always be by your side. You need to learn to show the world that you are worth just as much as anyone else." Emily picked up a piece of bread and continued, "That's why I insist on working, on having my independence. My parents wanted to protect me, but I convinced them that I needed to try." "And do they support your work at the bakery?" "Now they do. At first, they were worried, thinking people would mistreat me or deceive me. But when they saw that I was happy, that I could manage on my own, they became proud." Emily smiled with satisfaction. "My dad always tells the neighbors that his daughter works and earns her own money. And boyfriends. Besides that Mark you mentioned yesterday." Emily's smile faded a bit. "Oh, that topic is complicated. My parents are super protective when it comes to dating. They think most men just want to take advantage of me, whether out of malice or pity." "And do you think that's true?" "I think there are good people and bad people everywhere. The problem is that when you have a disability, people see you differently, either as a poor thing that needs protection or as someone who has no feelings." "Normal desires." Emily looked directly into David's eyes. "But I do, you know. I dream of falling in love, getting married, having kids. I want to build a family, have someone to share the good and bad days." Emily's honesty and vulnerability touched David deeply. "Do your parents know about your dreams?" "They do, but they're scared. My mom always says, 'Emily, you have such a big heart. You need to be careful not to get hurt.'" She sighed. "Sometimes I think they would prefer if I gave up the idea of dating and stayed with them, safe and protected." "But you won't give up, will you?" David asked, and there was something in his voice that made Emily look at him more closely. "Why do you think I should?" She returned the question. "I think you should fight for your dreams. All of them." David paused, gathering courage. "Emily, can I be frank with you?" "Always," she replied, leaning slightly forward. "When my friends set up our meeting yesterday, they thought they were playing a cruel joke. They expected me to feel uncomfortable and run away." David saw Emily's expression change, a shadow of hurt crossing her face. "But what happened was exactly the opposite. I had one of the most pleasant afternoons I've had in years." "Really?" Emily asked, her voice filled with hope and skepticism. "Really. You're smart, funny, caring, and you have a wisdom about life that many people lack." David held her hand more firmly. "I would really like to continue getting to know you better." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "David, I need you to be sure of what you're saying, because if you're doing this out of pity or kindness, I'd rather you be honest now." "Emily, look at me," David asked, hoping she would raise her eyes. "I don't feel pity for you. I feel admiration. You've faced challenges I've never encountered and become an incredible person. If anyone here should feel pity, it would be you for me. Why? Because I've spent 2 years running from life, hiding behind work and fatherhood responsibilities. You, despite all the difficulties, never gave up on dreaming." David squeezed her hand. You reminded me that I can dream again. When they left the restaurant an hour and a half later, both felt that something fundamental had changed between them. It was no longer just curiosity or sympathy. It was the beginning of a real connection based on mutual respect and genuine admiration. Can I invite you to something? Emily asked as they walked down the sidewalk. Of course. On Saturday I'll be tending to my garden in the morning. If Lily wants, you could come over for breakfast. I make a carrot cake that even my dad, who doesn't like sweets, asks for seconds. David smiled, imagining Lily running among the flowers in Emily's garden. We would love that. But are you sure your parents won't mind? My parents will want to meet you anyway. It's better that it's in their territory where they feel safe to evaluate you, Emily laughed. And David, thank you. Why? For seeing me as I really am, for not treating me like I'm made of glass. Emily stood on her tiptoes and gave him a soft kiss on the cheek. See you Saturday. As David returned to the office, still feeling the gentle scent of Emily and the warmth of that simple kiss, he knew his life was about to change forever, and for the first time in 2 years, this change didn't scare him. It filled him with hope. Saturday dawned sunny, with that clear blue sky typical of autumn in New York that made people smile for no apparent reason. David woke up earlier than usual, a mix of anxiety and anticipation coursing through his veins like strong coffee. Lily was still sleeping in her room, hugging the teddy bear that had been a gift from her mother, and he took advantage of the morning silence to reflect on what was about to happen. It would be the first time he took Lily to meet a woman outside the family circle. The girl had shown increasing curiosity about Emily during the week, asking details about her work, her flowers, and especially about her famous brownies. "Daddy, is she younger than you?" she had asked on Thursday, with that childlike insight that always surprised him. "A few years," David had replied, omitting that Emily was only 25, a difference that, on paper, seemed significant, but in reality became irrelevant in light of her emotional maturity. At 8:30, father and daughter were in the car, driving through the still, peaceful streets of Brooklyn toward Harmony Street, where Emily lived with her parents in a simple 2-bedroom townhouse. Lily wore her favorite blue dress, with white flats and a headband, insisting on looking pretty to meet the flower lady, as she had dubbed Emily. "Daddy, what if she doesn't like me?" Lily asked, as they stopped at the traffic light at the corner of Emily's street. "Why wouldn't she like you, Princess?" "I don't know. Sometimes strange people don't like kids. Aunt Sarah at your work always makes a face when she sees me." David laughed, remembering the grumpy secretary at the office. "Emily isn't like Aunt Sarah. She has a big heart and loves kids. I bet you two will get along great." The Johnson family house was a light beige townhouse with a small flower-filled balcony that hinted at Emily's passion for plants. The green-painted wrought-iron gate was ajar, and they could hear the sound of a hose being used in the backyard. David parked the car and took a deep breath before getting out. "Is this it?" Lily asked, curiously observing the street. In a residential area where children rode bicycles and neighbors chatted on the sidewalks, a striking contrast to the quiet gated community where they lived in the Upper East Side. "This is it," David confirmed, taking his daughter's small hand. Emily appeared at the door even before they rang the bell, as if she had been watching from the window. She wore a light pink t-shirt and a knee-length denim skirt with white sneakers that looked brand new. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she held a small red metal watering can. "Lily!" she exclaimed, bending down to be at the girl's height. "You look so beautiful. Your dad said you have blue eyes like the sky, but he didn't tell me they shine like stars." Lily blushed at the compliment, but smiled shyly. "And you are the flower girl?" "I am, and I was waiting for you to show you my secret garden," Do you want to see? The connection between them was immediate and natural. Emily took Lily's hand with the same gentleness that David had observed in her interactions with the plants, and the girl let herself be guided without resistance. David followed them, watching with emotion as his daughter reacted to Emily's warm presence. The backyard was small, but had been transformed into a true oasis. Neatly organized flower beds housed red roses, white daisies, basil, mint, cherry tomatoes, and a small lemon tree that perfumed the entire area. A white plastic table was set for breakfast, with a floral tablecloth and colorful plates that gave a festive air to the gathering. "Wow!" Lily exclaimed, letting go of Emily's hand to run among the flower beds. "It's just like Mum's garden, but even prettier." Emily looked at David, who nodded with a smile. "Did your mum like plants?" "She took care of orchids. Dad said she used to talk to them." Lily bent down to smell a rose. "Can I talk to your flowers too?" "Of course. They love visitors and hearing beautiful stories." While Lily explored the garden, Emily guided David to the kitchen, where a table was filled with homemade treats, warm carrot cake, sugar bread made by the neighbor, fruits cut into flower shapes, and a pitcher of fresh orange juice. "Your parents?" David asked, noticing that the house seemed too quiet. "They went to buy bread at Mr. Baker's bakery 3 blocks away. My dad said he wanted to meet you naturally, not like it was an interrogation." Emily laughed. "Translation, they're nervous and went to buy time to think about what they will say." "And you, are you nervous?" Emily stopped arranging the cups and looked directly at him. "I am, but it's a good kind of nervous, you know, like when you're about to open a gift you've really wanted." Her simplicity and honesty continued to surprise David. "Emily, can I ask you a question?" "Always. Have you ever thought that, well, we have very different lives? I live in an expensive condo, work at a big company, and Lily goes to a private school." David hesitated. "Not that this matters to me, but it might to others." Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, crossing her arms. "David, are you referring to money or the fact that I have Down syndrome?" The direct question caught him off guard. I guess both." "Look, about money, I know you have more than we do. My parents work hard to give what they can, and I also work to have my independence. I'm not ashamed of where I come from." Emily paused. "Now, about my syndrome, I was born with it and I will die with it. If that's a problem for you, it's better we find out now." "Emily, it's not a problem." David moved closer to her. "I just want to make sure we're being realistic about the challenges we might face." "What kind of challenges?" "People will talk. They might say I'm taking advantage of you, or that you're interested in my money, or—" David sighed. "I don't know, they can make up any cruel thing." Emily watched him for a moment before responding. "David, since I was born, people have talked about me. I've heard it all, that I'm an angel sent by God, that I'm a poor thing, that my parents were punished for some sin, that I should be locked up at home." Her voice was firm, without anger or self-pity. "I've learned that I can't live my life based on what others think." At that moment, the front door opened, and male and female voices echoed through the house. Emily smiled. "The judgment hour has arrived," she joked, but David sensed a real tension in her voice. Mr. Johnson entered the kitchen first, a medium-height, thin man with grey hair and calloused hands from work. His brown eyes were just like his daughter's, but they carried a natural distrust of someone who had spent his life protecting his family. Behind him was Mary, a 50-year-old woman, short and strong, with short hair and a penetrating gaze that seemed to X-ray David instantly. "So you are David," Mr. Johnson said, extending his hand with a firm and prolonged handshake. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for having me in your home." "The house is simple, but the heart is big," Mary interjected, studying David from head to toe. "Emily talked a lot about you this week." I hope it was good things. David tried to break the ice with a smile. Depends on what you consider good, Mary replied without smiling back. Emily quickly intervened. Mom, David brought Lily to see the garden. She's out there talking to the roses. His daughter? Mr. Johnson asked, and David noticed a slight change in his expression. A father always recognizes another father. Yes, she's 8 years old, David explained. We lost her mother 2 years ago. The information had a visible impact on the couple. Mary softened her expression, and Mr. Johnson nodded. It's hard to raise a girl alone, the older man commented. Very hard, David admitted. Lily is a special girl, but sometimes I feel like I'm not enough. No parent is enough alone, Mary said, her first sentence without a tone of distrust. And no mother is either. A child needs a complete family. During breakfast in the garden, the initial tension began to dissipate. Lily charmed Emily's parents with her spontaneity, asking questions about the plants and sincerely praising Miss Mary's carrot cake. The girl had inherited David's ease of talking to people of different ages and social classes. Uncle John, Lily said as she savored a slice of cake. Emily said you work in a big building. Do you know many important people? John smiled for the first time since he arrived. I do, little. But do you know what I've learned in these 20 years? The most important people are those who treat everyone well, no matter if it's the doorman or the owner of the apartment. Like my dad, Lily exclaimed. He always greets everyone in our building by name. David felt his cheeks flush with his daughter's unexpected compliment, but noticed that the observation had made a positive impression on John. Is that so? The older man asked Lily, but looking at David. Yes, and he always teaches me that everyone deserves respect, Lily continued innocently. That's why, when he told me about Emily, I was curious to meet her. And what did you think of Emily? Mary asked, genuinely interested. She's beautiful and smells like a flower, Lily replied without hesitation. And she makes the tastiest cake I've ever had after Mum's. The compliment made Emily blush, and Mary smile proudly. She learned from me and her grandma, her mum said. Emily has always been good in the kitchen. And in the garden too, Lily added. Dad, did you see how happy her plants are? I think she talks to them like Mom used to. The natural mention of the deceased mother without sadness or embarrassment, but as a fond memory, deeply touched Emily's parents. They realized that Lily had been raised to honor her mother's memory without clinging to grief, a sign that David was handling the situation well. When it was time to leave, 3 hours later, the atmosphere had completely changed. John helped David put some basil seedlings that Emily had prepared for them in the trunk of the car, while Mary wrapped slices of cake for them to take home. David, John called him when they were alone in the yard, can I say something? Of course, Mr. Johnson. Emily is special, not because of the syndrome, but because of the heart she has. The man paused, choosing his words. She has suffered a lot because of people who didn't know how to value that. I understand, David replied seriously. You seem like a good man, and your daughter is a well-mannered child. But I need to know, are your intentions with my daughter serious? The direct question deserved an equal answer. Mr. Johnson, I just met Emily. It would be premature to talk about marriage or serious commitment, but I can assure you that my interest in her is genuine and respectful. John nodded slowly. That's an honest answer. I only ask one thing. If you realize that this is not what you want, be clear with her from the start. Emily has feelings like any woman, and she deserves to be treated with sincerity. You have my word. David extended his hand, and this time the handshake was warm and lasting. As they said goodbye at the door, Lily spontaneously hugged Emily. Emily, can you come to my house one day? I want to show you my mom's room. Emily looked at David, who nodded emotionally. I would love to see your home, Lily. On the way back, Lily chatted excitedly about the garden, the cake, Emily's parents, and especially about how she was cool and fun. David drove in silence, processing the morning he had just spent. There was something in the simplicity of that family that touched him deeply. The modest home, always clean and organized. The genuine affection between parents and child. The way Emily spoke of her dreams without shame or pretense. The way John and Mary had welcomed a stranger child with the same affection they would give a granddaughter. "Dad," Lily said when they were almost home, "you really like Emily, don't you?" "Why do you ask, Princess?" "Because you smile differently when you're around her, just like you used to smile when Mum was alive." His daughter's observation hit him like a lightning bolt. She was right. For the first time in 2 years, he felt genuinely happy, not just without sadness or worry, but actively joyful. "And did you like her?" David returned the question. "I liked her a lot. I think Mum would like her too." When they arrived at the apartment in the Upper East Side, a 3-bedroom townhouse with a view of the city, David noticed the contrast between his life and Emily's. There was the material comfort that hard work had provided, but something was missing that he had felt that simple morning in the blooming garden of Brooklyn, the feeling of being in a true home, where love was more important than appearances. That night, while Lily slept hugging her teddy bear and the basil seedlings that Emily had given her, David stood on the balcony looking at the illuminated city and thinking about the question John had asked. Were his intentions serious? He still didn't know how to answer for sure, but one thing was clear. Emily had awakened feelings in him that he believed had died along with Carla. And for the first time, that didn't scare him. The weeks that followed that Saturday in the Johnson family garden created a new and surprisingly natural routine in David's life. Every Wednesday, he had lunch with Emily, discovering new facets of her personality with each meeting. On Fridays, he would stop by Sweet Treats Bakery in the late afternoon to pick up Lily from her ballet class, which was 3 blocks away, always buying brownies for the weekend, a transparent excuse that made Emily smile and Mr. Johnson nod his head in paternal approval. Lily had become the biggest enthusiast of this blossoming relationship. Every night during dinner, she would ask about Emily, if she had created any new recipes, how the flowers in the garden were doing, when they would see each other again. The girl had started drawing Emily's family in her school notebooks, always depicting the young woman surrounded by colorful flowers and giant smiles. It was a sunny Tuesday in May when everything began to crumble. David was in a meeting with the partners of the construction company in the elegant office on the 15th floor, discussing the project for a new residential development in the South Side, when Mark Peterson, the project manager, decided to break the ice with a comment that would change everything. "Guys, before we start, I have to share some delicious gossip," Mark said, adjusting his tie with a mischievous smile. "Our dear David has turned philanthropist. He's dating the young woman with disabilities from the bakery that we bet he wouldn't last even an afternoon." The silence that followed was deafening. David felt the blood rush to his cheeks, a mix of anger and embarrassment he hadn't experienced since adolescence. At the table, besides Mark, were Dr. James Anderson, the majority partner of the company, a 65-year-old conservative and traditionalist, Rodrigo Campos, responsible for sales, and the executive secretary taking minutes of the meeting. "Mark, that's absolutely inappropriate," David said in a controlled voice, but everyone could sense the tension behind his words. "Relax, man. I'm just joking," Mark laughed, completely ignoring David's evident discomfort. "But come on, how long did it last? Did you manage to make a few charity visits, or did you give up right after the first date?" Dr. James adjusted his glasses, observing the situation with growing interest. "What exactly are you talking about?" "Well, we made a bet last month," Mark explained, clearly pleased to have everyone's attention. David always thought he was very special, never accepting the dates we arranged with normal women. So we decided to lower the bar and set him up with a young, let's say, woman with special needs. Mark, I suggest you stop right there. David stood up from his chair, his hands trembling slightly, with contained rage. Wow, you really hit a nerve. Guys, I think David has truly fallen in love, Mark continued, oblivious to the danger. Just imagine the most straight-laced director of the company dating a person with intellectual disabilities from Brooklyn. The use of the prejudice term was the last straw. David lunged at Mark, but Rodrigo quickly stepped between them. Guys, let's calm down here. Dr. James slammed his fist on the table, restoring silence. Enough! Mark, you are suspended for the rest of the week without pay for inappropriate conduct. His gaze turned to David. And you, I need to speak with you privately after this meeting. The subsequent business meeting was tense and unproductive. David could barely concentrate on the numbers and projections presented, his mind divided between the anger of what had happened and the fear of what Dr. James would say in private. When the others finally left the room, leaving only him and the majority partner, the silence weighed like lead. David, Dr. James began, removing his glasses and meticulously cleaning them. In 30 years of partnership, this is the first time I have to deal with a situation like this. Dr. James, I can explain. Let me finish, the older man raised his hand. You are an exemplary professional. I have never had reason to question your technical competence or your work ethic. But I need to understand one thing. Does what Mark said have any basis? David took a deep breath. It depends on how you interpret the facts. Interpret it for me. Yes, I am seeing a young woman with Down syndrome. No, it was not a bet or a joke on my part. No, I do not see her as an object of charity or philanthropy. David looked directly into the eyes of the partner. Emily is an intelligent, hard-working and independent woman. The fact that she has a syndrome does not define who she is. Dr. James remained silent for long minutes, drumming his fingers on the mahogany table. David, you have a small daughter to raise and a brilliant career ahead of you. Have you stopped to think about the implications of this choice? The word choice echoed in David's mind like an insult. What kind of implications? Our clients are conservative people, traditional families who invest fortunes in our developments. Dr. James stood up, walking to the window overlooking the East River. The image of the company's directors directly reflects the trust these clients place in us. Are you suggesting that my personal life affects my professional ability? I am saying that, in our field, appearances matter, and a company director dating a person with intellectual disabilities can be misinterpreted. David felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Dr. James, with all due respect, Emily does not have an intellectual disability. She has Down syndrome, which is a genetic condition, and even if she did, that would not diminish her worth as a person. David, I am not questioning her worth as a person. I'm questioning the wisdom of your choices. Dr. James turned to face him. Have you considered the possibility that this young woman might be interested in your financial situation? The insinuation was like a slap in the face. Emily does not know details about my financial situation. She met me as an engineer, not as the director of a construction company. Oh, Dr. James raised his eyebrows. So you lied to her from the start? David realized he had fallen into a trap. Any answer now would be problematic. I simplified my introduction to avoid creating discomfort. Or, well, you weren't honest, and now you're emotionally involved with someone who doesn't know your true identity. Dr. James returned to his chair. David, I'll be direct. I suggest you rethink this situation before it becomes a bigger problem. And what if I don't want to rethink? Then you'll need to decide what's more important, your career or this romance. The threat was implicit, but clear. We have a meeting with Japanese investors next week. They are extremely conservative and will research the personal lives of all directors involved in the project. I can't afford to explain unusual situations. David left the office 2 hours later, completely shaken. In the elevator, he found Mark waiting for him with a worried expression. "David, man, what a tough situation," Mark said as soon as the doors closed. "Emily is a decent person, but James has a point." "What point?" David asked, pressing the ground floor button harder than necessary. "Look, I'm not judging you. Everyone knows their own life. But you need to be realistic about the consequences." Mark lowered his voice. "The construction market is small. People talk. If this leaks to competitors, they could use it against us." "Use it how? Emily isn't a scandal, Mark. She's a good person." "I know, man, but you know how people are. They'll make jokes, question your judgment, and invent malicious theories." Mark paused. "And you have your daughter to think about, too. Lily will grow up hearing comments about her dad." In the car, on the way to Lily's school, David felt completely lost. The words of Dr. James and Mark echoed in his mind, planting seeds of doubt he didn't want to cultivate. Would it be selfish of him to expose Emily to this kind of prejudice? Would it be fair to Lily to create a situation that could lead to hurtful comments? Lily got into the car, chattering about her day at school, but soon realized something was wrong. "Dad, are you sad?" "I'm just thinking about some work stuff, Princess." "Bad stuff." David looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror. Her blue eyes were filled with genuine concern. "Sometimes people say things that hurt even when they shouldn't." "Did someone say something about Emily?" Lily's direct question surprised him. "Why do you ask that?" "Because every time you look sad now, I think it's because of Emily. Just like when Mom was sick and you were worried." Lily unbuckled her seatbelt when they stopped at a red light. "Dad, are you going to stop liking Emily?" His daughter's innocent question felt like a stab. "Lily, why do you think that?" "Because you have the same face you made when the doctors said bad things about Mom. And then Mom left." David pulled the car over to the first spot he found and turned to his daughter. "Lily, Emily isn't sick, and no one is leaving. Then why are you sad?" How could he explain to an 8-year-old that the adult world was full of prejudices and cruelties? How could he tell her that people judged themselves superior for not having a genetic syndrome? "Some people at my work think that Emily is too different." "Different how?" "They think people like Emily shouldn't date people like me." Lily frowned, processing the information with the seriousness that children reserve for important matters. "But do you love Emily?" The direct question made David realize he hadn't allowed himself to think in those terms yet. Love. Was that what he felt? I really like her, Lily." "Then it doesn't matter what other people think," Lily declared, with the simple wisdom of childhood. "The teacher always says that when we love someone, we have to take care of them, not hurt them." That night, after putting Lily to bed, David stood on the balcony of the apartment looking at the city lights and thinking about the crossroads he found himself at. On one side was the professional and financial stability he had built over years of hard work. On the other was Emily, a woman who had awakened feelings in him that he thought were buried along with Lisa. The phone rang at 9:30. It was Emily. "Hi, how was your day?" Her cheerful voice sounded like a balm to David's tortured soul. "It was complicated," he replied, struggling to keep his tone normal. "Did something happen?" David hesitated. Should he tell her what had happened at the office? Should he mention the pressures he was under? "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever regretted meeting me?" The question came out of nowhere, but he needed to know. Emily was silent for a few seconds before answering. "Why are you asking that?" "It's just that sometimes I think I might be complicating your life, bringing problems you don't deserve." "David, look at me," Emily said. And even though they were talking on the phone, he could perfectly visualize her sincere eyes. "Since you came into my life, I feel more alive than ever. For the first time, someone sees me as a real woman, not as a poor thing or an angel. But people can talk. People always talk, David. About me, about you, about anyone who's a little different from the norm." Emily paused. "The question is, are you going to let others decide who you can or can't love?" The word love echoed in the silence of the balcony like a bell ringing. Lily had asked the same question a few hours earlier, and now Emily was using the same term with ease. "Emily," David said softly, "I need to tell you something that could change everything between us." "What is it?" "I haven't been completely honest about my job. I'm not just an ordinary engineer. I'm the director of a large construction company, and that means I have a financial situation much better than I let on." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that David checked to see if the call had dropped. "Emily, are you there?" "I am." Her voice sounded different, colder. "Why did you lie to me?" "I didn't exactly lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "David, that's lying. You made me believe we were more alike than we really are." The hurt in her voice was palpable. "Why? Were you ashamed to show me your real life? Did you think I wouldn't understand? Or did you think I would be interested in your money?" "Emily, it wasn't any of that." "Then what was it?" she interrupted, and David realized there were tears in her voice. "Were you just having fun with a poor, special girl? Seeing how far you could take the game?" "Emily, for God's sake, you know that's not it." "I don't know what to believe anymore, David. You lied about something so basic." She took a deep breath. "I need to think. I need to understand what all of this means." "Emily, please don't hang up. Let's talk in person." "No, not now. I need time." The call ended, leaving David alone on the porch with the silent phone in his hand and the weight of guilt crushing his chest. In a single day, he had lost the respect of his colleagues and possibly the trust of the only woman who had managed to touch his heart since Lisa's death. For the first time in 2 years, David cried. The days that followed that disastrous phone call dragged on like weeks for David. Emily didn't answer his calls, didn't respond to his messages, and when he showed up at Sweet Treats Bakery on Thursday, contrary to the promise he made to himself to give her space, Mr. Johnson greeted him with a cold look that dismissed any explanations. "She doesn't want to talk to you," the older man said dryly, continuing to arrange the pastries in the display case without looking directly at David. "And I suggest you respect her decision." "Mr. Johnson, I know I made a mistake, but I need to explain." "Son," Mr. Johnson finally looked at him, and his eyes showed a disappointment that hurt more than anger. "Emily came here on Monday with swollen eyes from crying. She couldn't work properly all day." He paused, drying his hands on his apron. "That girl has suffered too much in life to endure another disappointment." David left the bakery with a weight in his chest that seemed to grow with each hour. At work, the atmosphere was tense as well. Mark had returned from his suspension with a permanent, sarcastic smile, making subtle comments whenever he passed David in the hallways. Dr. James treated him with a professional coldness that made it clear the issue was not forgotten. Lily, with the keen perception of children for changes in adult moods, began to ask increasingly direct questions. "Dad, why don't you talk to Emily anymore?" she asked on Sunday while they played in the park near their condo. "Emily is upset with me, Princess." "Why? Did you do something bad?" David pushed the swing where Lily was sitting, watching other parents play with their children on a sunny Sunday that contrasted brutally with his state of mind. I wasn't completely honest with her about some things. What kind of things? How could he explain to an 8-year-old the complex social and economic games that complicated adult relationships? Things about Dad's work. Lily stopped the swing, turning to face him. Dad, did you lie to her? His daughter's direct question hit him like a slap. Not exactly lied, but I omitted some information. Mom always said that omitting is also lying when it's about important things, Lily said with the seriousness children reserve for matters they consider grave. Are you going to apologize? I tried, but she doesn't want to talk to me. Then you have to try harder. When I fight with Emily at school, sometimes she stays mad for a while, but if I keep insisting on apologizing, she eventually forgives me. The simplicity of Lily's logic made David smile for the first time in a week. And what if she doesn't forgive? Then it's because you hurt her a lot, and you'll have to show that you've really changed. The following Monday, David made a decision that surprised everyone in the office. During the morning meeting, he addressed Dr. James directly. Dr. James, I need to announce something important, David said, interrupting the presentation of last month's numbers. Go ahead, the senior partner replied, clearly annoyed by the interruption. I want to officially announce that I am dating Emily Johnson, a 25-year-old who works at Sweet Treats Bakery in Brooklyn. She has Down syndrome, is an extraordinary person, and I am proud to have her in my life. The silence in the meeting room was complete. Mark dropped his pen, Rodrigo's eyes widened, and Dr. James turned red with suppressed anger. David, what the hell do you think you're doing? Dr. James exploded. I'm being honest about my personal life, since apparently it has become a matter of professional interest, David replied calmly. And I want to make it clear that any disrespectful comments about Emily will be treated as harassment. Have you lost your mind? Mark murmured, but loud enough for everyone to hear. David turned to him. Mark, you were suspended for prejudiced comments. I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself from now on. Dr. James stood up, clearly trying to control his anger. David, we will discuss this privately after the meeting. There's nothing to discuss privately, David replied. My professional competence and my personal life are separate matters. If there are any questions about my work, they should be based on technical criteria, not social prejudices. After leaving the office in turmoil, David drove straight to the Johnson family home. It was noon. On a Monday afternoon, a time when Emily would normally be working, David was willing to wait as long as necessary. Mary answered the door with an expression that mixed surprise and distrust. What do you want here? Miss Mary, I know I have no right to ask this, but I need to talk to Emily. She's at work, and even if she were here, I don't know if she would want to see you. I understand that you're upset with me. Upset? Mary interrupted, stepping out onto the sidewalk and closing the door behind her. Boy, my daughter cried for 3 nights straight because of you. Do you think upset describes what I'm feeling? David lowered his head. Miss Mary, I made a terrible mistake, but you need to believe that I never intended to hurt Emily. Intention or not, you hurt her. Deeply. Mary crossed her arms. Emily told me everything. How you presented yourself as an ordinary engineer. How you let her believe you came from similar worlds. I can explain. Explain what? That you were ashamed to say who you really were? That you thought my daughter wouldn't understand money? Or that you were afraid she would be interested in your wealth? Each word from Mary was like a knife, especially because they carried a truth that David didn't want to admit even to himself. I think I was afraid she would judge me differently. And you didn't judge her differently from day one, treating her like a fragile little doll that needed to be protected from reality. The accusation hit him hard. Miss Mary, I never— Never what? Never thought she was too simple to understand your real life. Never thought it would be easier to simplify things. Mary shook her head, in disappointment. Look, boy, I actually liked you at first. I thought someone finally appeared who saw my daughter as she really is. But it seems you also see her as a little girl who needs to be protected from the truth. David felt tears forming in his eyes. Miss Mary, I love Emily. Love is easy to say, hard is to respect. She turned to go back inside, but stopped at the door. If you really love my daughter, give her what she needs most, honesty and respect. Stop trying to protect her from who you really are. That afternoon, David made a drastic decision. He left the office early and went to pick up Lily from school. Princess, how about we visit a special place? Where? Lily asked, always excited about surprises. Let's go see where Emily works. Lily's face lit up. Is she going to be there? I finally get to meet her famous brownies. The bakery was busy with the afternoon rush when they arrived. Emily was behind the counter, organizing sweets on trays when she looked up and saw them. Her expression immediately closed off, but Lily had already run toward her. Emily! Emily! Dad! Brought me to see where you work, the girl exclaimed, completely ignoring the tension in the air. Emily knelt to be at Lily's height, and David could see her heart breaking as she forced a smile for the child. Hi, Lily. What a nice surprise to see you. I missed you. Why don't you come over to our house more? The basil you gave is huge. Emily quickly glanced at David, then returned her attention to Lily. Sometimes adults get busy with boring things, you know. But did you two fight? Lily asked with the typical frankness of children. Lily, David gently intervened. How about you pick out some sweets to take home? While Lily was dazzled by the variety of brownies in the display case, David stepped closer to Emily. Can I talk to you for 2 minutes? There's nothing to talk about, she replied curtly, but kept her voice low to avoid drawing attention. Please, Emily, just 2 minutes. She hesitated, looking at Lily, who was explaining to Mr. Johnson about the garden at home. 2 minutes, in the back. In the small area where Emily prepared her sweets, away from the curious eyes of customers, David finally had a chance to speak. Emily, I know you don't want to hear me, but I need you to know something. What? She asked, keeping her distance and avoiding looking directly at him. Today, I told all my coworkers about you, officially. Emily looked up, surprised. Why? Because I was trying to protect you in the wrong way. I was hiding parts of my life thinking it would be easier for both of us. David took a deep breath. But I realized I can't love someone halfway. And I can't be ashamed of who you are or who I am. David, Emily began, but he continued. I lost my job today. Or I will soon. My boss made it clear that our relationship is incompatible with the company's image. David smiled sadly. Funny how things change perspective when you have to choose between money and love. Emily stared at him, trying to process what she had heard. You lost your job because of me? I chose you, Emily. I chose the truth. And if that means starting over professionally, so be it. David took a step toward her. I just don't want to start over alone. Tears began to stream down Emily's face. David, you don't understand. It's not just about money or work. Then explain it to me. Help me understand. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. It's about trust. My whole life people have lied to me to protect me. My parents hid that I had Down syndrome until I was 15. Teachers pretended I was doing well when I wasn't. Friends made excuses not to invite me to parties. Emily, you don't understand what it's like to discover that the people you love most in the world think you're too fragile for the truth. Her voice choked. When you omitted who you really were, it was as if you were saying that I wasn't strong enough to handle your real life. David finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. It wasn't about money or social class. It was about respect and equality in the relationship. "Emily, I'm so sorry, truly." "I know you are," she sighed, "but how can I trust that you won't protect me from other truths in the future?" The question hung in the air as Lily appeared at the door. "Emily, Mr. Johnson said you make the best coconut kisses in New York. Is that true?" Emily quickly composed herself, smiling at the girl. "Want to try one?" As Lily savored the treat, David watched Emily interact with his daughter. He saw the naturalness, the genuine affection, the way she treated Lily as a whole person without condescension. And he realized that this was exactly how he wanted to be treated too, as a complete person, capable of dealing with truths, no matter how difficult they were. "Emily," he said when Lily got distracted fiddling with the baking utensils, "I will prove to you that I've changed." "How?" "By being completely honest from now on, about everything, including how much I love you and how afraid I am of messing it all up again." Emily looked at him for long seconds as if trying to read his soul through his eyes. "David, I love you too. That's why it hurts so much. So give me a chance to get it right this time." Before Emily could respond, Lily came running back. "Daddy, Emily, I had an idea. What if Emily came over for dinner and cooked for us? Then you two could talk and make up." The two adults looked at each other and for the first time in a week smiled at the same time. "What do you think?" David asked Emily. "Will you accept Lily's invitation?" Emily hesitated for just a moment before answering. "I will, but under one condition." "What?" "No secrets, about anything." "I promise." David extended his hand to seal the agreement. When Emily shook his hand, both felt that they were not only making up, but also establishing a new foundation for their relationship, a foundation built on honesty, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable with those they love. The dinner at David's house was set for the following Saturday, and the days that followed were an emotional roller coaster for both. On Thursday, the bomb David had feared finally exploded. Dr. James summoned him for a final meeting about his future at the company. The office felt colder than usual when David entered the conference room. Dr. James was accompanied by two men in suits that David didn't recognize, likely company lawyers. On the table was a folder with documents that clearly did not contain good news. "David, I need to be direct," Dr. James began without preamble. "Your behavior this week has created an unsustainable situation." "What do you mean?" David asked, although he knew exactly what it was about. "The Japanese investors have cancelled the project. When they learned about your personal situation, they deemed it inappropriate to proceed with the partnership." Dr. James pushed the folder in his direction. "We're talking about a $50 million contract." David felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "They cancelled because of my relationship?" "They cited irreconcilable cultural differences with the company's philosophy," one of the lawyers explained in a monotone voice. "In practical terms, yes, it was because of your public stance on the relationship." "Dr. James," David leaned forward, "this is blatant discrimination. You can't fire me because of my personal life." "We're not firing you for your personal life," Dr. James smiled coldly. "We're terminating your contract due to incompatibility with business objectives. You cost the company $50 million with a reckless personal decision." David opened the folder and saw the termination documents. The severance offered was minimal, clearly calculated to punish him. "You can't do this." "We can, and we are," the second lawyer interjected. "You have until Monday to clear your desk. Security has been instructed to accompany you when you come to collect your personal belongings." Leaving the building 20 minutes later, David felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at the injustice and humiliation, relief at no longer having to pretend to respect people like Dr. James. But there was a very real concern. How would he support Lily? How would he pay for her private school, the health insurance, the expensive apartment on the Upper East Side? On the way to pick Lily up from school, he stopped at a red light and picked up the phone to call Emily. He had promised total honesty, and that included the bad news. "Hi." Her voice sounded warm, a stark contrast to the coldness he had felt in the office. "Emily, I need to tell you something." "Did something happen?" "I lost my job, officially, because of our relationship." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a few seconds. "David, I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "No," he interrupted firmly. "This is the fault of prejudice, and I don't regret my choice. But what now? How will you manage? And Lily," the genuine concern in her voice touched him deeply. "I'll figure it out. Maybe it's time to open my own office, take on smaller projects, start over." "David," Emily said softly, "if you want to cancel the dinner on Saturday, I understand. You must be overwhelmed with worries." "Emily Johnson," David said with a firmness that surprised himself, "do you think I'm going to let something like this pull me away from you again? Saturday is still on. In fact, I need more than ever the people who love me for who I am, not for what I have." When David told Lily about losing his job, omitting the details about discrimination, but being honest about the changes that would come, her reaction, the girl's question, surprised him. "Dad, does this mean we have to leave our home?" she asked, sitting on the sofa with her teddy bear in her lap. "Maybe, Princess. Dad will have to find a new job and we might earn less money for a while." Lily thought for a few minutes. "What if we moved to a smaller house, like Emily's? Would that be a problem for you?" "No," Lily replied without hesitation. "Actually, I always thought our home was a bit big and empty. Emily's house is small, but it feels cozier." The unconscious wisdom of his daughter made David smile for the first time that difficult day. "Lily, aren't you worried about any of this?" "I'm a little," she admitted, "but Mom always said that family isn't about the house you live in. It's about who lives together in the house." On Saturday, Emily arrived at David's apartment carrying 2 bags of ingredients and a visible nervousness. It was her first time entering his home, and the difference between their 2 worlds became even more evident. The duplex apartment in the Upper East Side, with a view of the city, designer furniture and sophisticated decor, contrasted drastically with the cozy simplicity of her home in Brooklyn. "Wow," she murmured, observing the spacious living room with high ceilings and a whole wall of glass. "It's beautiful, David." "It's too big for 2 people," David replied, watching Emily through the eyes of someone about to lose it all. "And too empty as well." Lily came running down the stairs, wearing a pink child-sized apron. "Emily, you came! Dad said you're going to cook for us." "I did, and I brought ingredients to make lasagna, my mum's specialty," Emily smiled, and all the tension in the expensive environment seemed to dissipate with her warm presence. In the gourmet kitchen with marble countertops and imported appliances, Emily moved with the same naturalness she showed in her simple home kitchen. Lily became her official assistant, washing tomatoes and grating cheese while chattering about school and friends. "Emily," Lily said while helping to assemble the lasagna, "Dad is sad about work, right?" David, who was preparing a salad, paused to listen to the conversation. "Sometimes bad. Things happen to good people," Emily replied, choosing her words carefully. "But your dad is very smart and brave. He will find a way to fix everything." "And will you still like him even if he becomes poor?" Lily asked with the brutal honesty of children. Emily stopped spreading the sauce to look directly at the girl. "Lily, I don't like your dad for the money he has. I like him because he has a good heart, because he is a wonderful dad to you, and because he treats me with kindness and respect." Even if you have to live in a small house? Even if we had to live in a really tiny house, Emily confirmed, smiling. You know why? Because big or small, what matters is having loved ones to share it with. David felt his eyes welling up listening to that conversation. Throughout his relationship with Lisa, they had never faced financial difficulties. He didn't know how she would react to a situation like this. But Emily, who had known life with financial limitations all along, showed not a moment of hesitation. During dinner, Emily shared funny stories from the bakery, eccentric customers, crazy orders, the daily dramas of Mr. Johnson with suppliers. David found himself genuinely laughing for the first time since Thursday's meeting. Emily, he said when Lily went to the bathroom, I need to tell you all the details of what happened at work. You don't have to if you don't want to. I want to. I promise total honesty, remember? David took a deep breath. They didn't fire me just because I'm your boyfriend. They fired me because a $1 million project was cancelled when the Japanese investors found out about our relationship. Emily stopped eating, her fork suspended in the air. How much money? $50 million. She dropped the fork onto the plate with a metallic clatter. David, I didn't know it was such a big deal. And it's not, he hurried to say. Money isn't more important than you, than us. But 50 million? Emily shook her head, trying to process the information. David, are you sure you want to continue with me? Because this will echo for a long time in your professional circle. Emily, look at me. David held her hand across the table. I'm 35 years old. I can start over. I can open my own office, work on smaller projects, build a new reputation based on my competence, not on the approval of prejudiced people. And what if it doesn't work out? Then we'll live in a small house in Brooklyn, Lily will go to public school, and I'll learn to make brownies to help you at the bakery. David smiled. It wouldn't be the end of the world. Emily looked at him with an expression that mixed love and admiration. You've really changed. What do you mean? The David I met a few weeks ago would never have said something like that. He was too worried about appearances. Lily came running back to the table. Guys, I had an idea. What if Emily came to live here with us? That way, when Dad becomes poor, we're already used to living together. The two adults exchanged glances and laughed at the child's logic, but both felt there was a deep wisdom in the girl's suggestion. After dinner, while Lily played in her room, David and Emily sat on the porch to talk. The nighttime view of the city stretched out before them, but they both knew that it could soon be just a memory. David, Emily said, watching the lights of the buildings, I have a proposal for you. What kind of proposal? How about you really get to know my world before giving up on yours? What do you mean? Emily turned to face him. That. Could you work at the bakery for a few weeks? Mr. Johnson needs help with the administrative side, and you could learn the business from the inside out. David stared at her, surprised. Are you serious? Completely. It wouldn't be forever, but it would be a way for you to understand what it's like to live with less, work with your hands, and depend on local customers instead of millionaire businessmen. The proposal was both frightening and liberating. Emily, I don't know anything about bakeries, but you know about numbers, management and supplier relationships. Mr. Johnson is 62 years old and has never had anyone to help him with the management side. Emily held his hand. And I would love to work by your side every day. David was silent for a few minutes, processing the proposal. Working in a neighborhood bakery after years running a construction company. Was it too radical a change? There's one thing you need to know before you answer, Emily added. What? My dad found out about what happened at your job. My mum told him last night. Emily smiled. He said that any man who chooses love over money deserves a second chance. Your dad really said that? He said more. He said you proved that you have character. Emily paused. And that if you want to start over, you can always count on our family. At that moment, looking at Emily's sincere face illuminated by the city lights, David understood that he had found something far more valuable than money or professional status. He had found a family that accepted him not for what he had, but for who he was. Emily, he said softly, I accept your proposal, but under one condition. What? That you teach me how to make brownies. Because if we're going to work together, I want to learn your specialty. Emily smiled, that radiant smile that had captivated David since their first meeting. Deal. But I warn you that making brownies is harder than managing a company. I'm willing to take the risk, David replied, sealing the agreement with a kiss that tasted of new beginnings and infinite possibilities. David's first morning at Sweet Treats Bakery began at 5 o'clock when the alarm rang in the still silent apartment. Lily was sound asleep, and he left a note explaining that he would be working early and would return to pick her up from school. It was Monday, and for the first time in 15 years of his career, he wasn't wearing a suit to work. Jeans, a simple shirt, and sneakers. A uniform that felt strange but curiously liberating. On the way to Brooklyn, driving through the still empty streets of New York, David wondered if he was committing the biggest madness of his life, from construction company director to bakery assistant in a matter of weeks. Any sensible person would say he had lost his mind. The bakery was already in operation when he arrived. Mr. Johnson was opening a batch of French bread, and the aroma that filled his nostrils brought back memories of his childhood when his grandma took him to buy fresh bread at the neighborhood bakery in Maplewood. Emily was in the small back kitchen, preparing the first batch of brownies of the day. "So you really came," Mr. Johnson said, watching David with an expression that mixed curiosity and skepticism. "I thought you would change your mind at the last minute." "I gave my word," David replied, tying the apron that Emily had set aside for him. "And I need to learn a new business." "Learning is one thing. Enduring is another," the older man grumbled. "Baking isn't a joke, you know. Waking up early every day, standing on your feet all day, dealing with annoying customers." Emily appeared at the kitchen door smiling. "Mr. Johnson, give the man a chance. It's his first day here." "The first day can also be the last," Mr. Johnson retorted, but David sensed a paternal affection behind the gruffness. "Well, since you're here, let's see if you're good for something. Do you know how to count money?" "I do," David replied, trying to hide his smile. After years dealing with million-dollar budgets, counting the cash at a bakery seemed ironic. "Then go to the register. Ms. Thompson arrives at 6 to help with cleaning, and then the morning rush for bread starts." The first hours were an intense learning experience. David discovered that working at the register of a neighborhood bakery was completely different from any previous professional experience. It wasn't just business transactions. It was conversations, advice, gossip, and special requests. Ms. Thompson, a 70-year-old lady who lived on the corner, arrived at 7 sharp as she had for the past 20 years. "Who is this handsome young man at the register, Mr. Johnson?" she asked, sizing David up. "He's Emily's boyfriend. He's learning the business," Mr. Johnson explained with evident pride in his voice. "Oh, it's you!" Ms. Thompson smiled. "Emily can't stop talking about you. She said you're an engineer, but now want to work here." David was surprised by the naturalness of the conversation. "I'm learning, Ms. Thompson. Emily convinced me that baking is a much more interesting business than construction." "Of course it is. Here we feed people, not build expensive buildings that no one can afford," the lady laughed. "And Emily is such a sweet person. You're lucky." "I know," David smiled. handing her the still warm French bread. "I really am." During the morning break, Emily called him to teach him the first steps of making brownies. In the small back kitchen, she had gathered all the ingredients: condensed milk, butter, cocoa powder, and colourful sprinkles. "First lesson," Emily said, turning on the low heat. "Making brownies is about patience and care. If you rush or get nervous, it won't turn out right." "Just like relationships," David commented, watching her mix the ingredients with precise movements. "Exactly," Emily laughed. "Now you take the spoon and keep stirring in the same direction, always. If you change the meaning, it can ruin everything." David took over the pot, trying to mimic her movements. It was harder than it looked. The mixture stuck to the bottom, and the right consistency seemed impossible to achieve, and his natural impatience made the process even more challenging. "Calm down," Emily said softly, placing her hand over his on the spoon. "Feel the rhythm of the mixture. It will tell you when it's ready." The physical closeness, the aroma of the ingredients, the concentration required for the task, everything conspired to create a moment of intimacy that David hadn't experienced in a long time. It was manual work, simple, but there was a subtle sensuality in the process that surprised him. "Now," Emily exclaimed, when the mixture began to pull away from the bottom of the pot, "it's ready. Did you see how it changed in texture?" David watched in fascination as the mixture transformed into something completely different. "How do you know exactly when to stop?" "Experience and intuition." Emily poured the mixture onto a plate to cool. "My grandma used to say that some things in life you don't learn in your head, you learn in your heart." During lunch, the three of them sat at the small table in the back of the bakery, David, Emily, and Mr. Johnson, sharing homemade lunchboxes that Miss Mary had prepared. It was rice, beans, stewed chicken, and cornbread, a simple meal that contrasted drastically with the executive lunches David was used to having. "So, kid," Mr. Johnson said between bites, "what did you think of your first morning?" "Exhausting," David admitted honestly, "but interesting. It's a different kind of tired." "What do you mean?" "At the office I got mentally tired, but physically I was always still. Here it's the opposite. The body works, but the mind relaxes." Mr. Johnson nodded in approval. "That's right. Honest work tires the body, but feeds the soul." "Mr. Johnson," David hesitated before asking the question that had intrigued him since the morning, "can I know how you got started in this business?" The older man smiled, a nostalgic expression crossing his face. "Long story, kid. I came from the countryside of Minas. I was 15 and had a knack for the business. I started as a bicycle bread delivery boy, learned the ropes from Mr. Baker, the former owner." "And how did you manage to buy the bakery?" "I worked for 20 years to save the money. I married Mary, we had 3 kids, and when Mr. Baker wanted to retire, he sold it to me for a fair price." Mr. Johnson paused. "But it wasn't easy. There were times we almost lost everything." "What do you mean?" "A big grocery store opened nearby about 10 years ago. They sell bread cheaper and have a wider variety. I thought I was going to have to close the doors." "And what saved the bakery?" David asked, genuinely interested. "The relationship with the customers," Emily replied. "Mr. Johnson knows everyone in the neighborhood by name. He knows who has diabetes and makes special bread, remembers the kids' birthdays, lends money when someone is in a pinch." "That's right," Mr. Johnson confirmed. "The grocery store sells products. The neighborhood bakery sells care along with it." The observation made David reflect on his previous career. At the construction company, customers were just numbers on spreadsheets, potential buyers evaluated only by their purchasing power. Here, each customer had a name, a story, personal preferences. In the afternoon, Emily taught him how to assemble trays of sweets for children's parties, one of the bakery's main sources of extra income. It was meticulous work that required not only technical skill but also aesthetic sense. Each tray tells a story, Emily explained, arranging colorful brownies in geometric shapes. This one is for Peter's birthday. He loves superheroes. That's why I use blue, red, and yellow. You decorate based on the child's taste? Always. Ms. Thompson always tells me about the personality of the grandchild who's celebrating. Then I imagine what his dream party would be like and make the tray thinking of that. David watched Emily work, noticing how she put genuine love into every detail. It wasn't just work, it was art applied to caring for people. At the end of the day, when they closed the bakery doors, David was exhausted in a way he hadn't felt in years. It was a physical, honest tiredness that came from 8 hours of standing, interacting with people, learning completely new skills. "So, did you survive your first day?" Emily asked as they walked down the street toward the cars. "I survived, and I liked it more than I expected." "What stood out to you the most?" David thought for a moment before responding. "The humanization of work. At the construction company, I spent the day dealing with spreadsheets, reports, meetings about abstract strategies. Here, every action has a direct impact on people's real lives." "What do you mean?" "Ms. Thompson, for example, she comes here every day not just to buy bread, but to chat, to feel part of a community. For her, the bakery is a social meeting point." Emily smiled, proud. "You understood the essence of the business." "And there's another thing," David continued. "For the first time in years, I ended the day feeling like I did something useful and concrete. The brownies we made in the morning were sold to families who are going to celebrate birthdays. It's tangible, real." When they reached David's car, Emily hesitated before saying goodbye. "David, can I say something?" "Always. I was watching you today, and I saw a person I didn't know yet." "What do you mean?" "You seemed lighter, more natural, as if you had taken off a mask you didn't even know you were wearing." The observation touched David deeply. "It's funny you say that. I felt it too." "Felt what?" "That for the first time in a long time, I was just being myself. No pressure to impress, no need to maintain an image, no corporate games." David held her hand. "You know what else? I had fun working today. Even though it was very different from what you're used to." "Exactly because of that," David smiled. "Emily, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for accepting. I know it can't be easy. Let go of the comfort you once had. Material comfort, perhaps, but emotional comfort. I found that here, with you." That night, while Lily enjoyed the brownies he had brought home and excitedly talked about her day at school, David reflected on the changes happening in his life. In a matter of weeks, he had lost a prestigious job, was learning a completely new trade, and was falling in love with a woman who challenged all the standards he had followed until then. "Dad," Lily said as she savored the last brownie, "you seem happier today." "Why do you think that, Princess?" "Because you're really smiling, not just with your mouth." His daughter's observation confirmed what Emily had said earlier. He had truly taken off a mask he hadn't even realized he was wearing, and discovering who he was beneath that mask was becoming one of the most liberating experiences of his life. For the first time since Carla's death, David went to bed genuinely excited for the next day. 3 weeks had passed since David started working at the bakery, and a surprisingly satisfying routine had established itself. He woke up at 5, arrived at the bakery by 5:30, helped Mr. Johnson with the morning batch, served customers throughout the morning, had lunch with Emily, learned baking techniques in the afternoon, and finished his day at 6. It was a simple, predictable life, and inexplicably rewarding. Lily had adapted to the new reality with the typical flexibility of children. She now went to the neighbor's house after school, until David arrived, and her weekends were filled with visits to Emily's garden and playing in Brooklyn. The girl seemed happier and more relaxed, far from the tense and competitive atmosphere of the Upper East Side condominium. It was a Thursday morning when everything changed again. David was at the register, serving Ms. Green, a retiree who bought sweet rolls every Thursday to take to her friends in the senior group, when a man in a suit entered the bakery and watched the activity with evident interest. "Mr. Johnson," the man addressed the owner when the line diminished. "My name is James Miller. I'm a representative of the Extra Good Supermarket chain. I'd like to talk to you about a proposal." Mr. Johnson immediately stiffened. In recent years, several large chains had tried to buy commercial spaces in the neighborhood, and the pressure on small business owners was constant. "I'm not interested in selling," Mr. Johnson said curtly. "You haven't even heard my proposal." James smiled with that corporate grin David knew well from the corporate world. "We're offering a very generous amount for the bakery, enough for you to retire comfortably. And leave the neighborhood without a real bakery? No, thank you." James noticed David behind the register, and his expression changed slightly. "Excuse me, but aren't you David Smith, former director of Skyline Engineering?" David felt all eyes turn to him. "I am," he replied simply. "What an interesting coincidence." James smiled, now with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "A former construction director working as a bakery cashier. Life really takes some turns, doesn't it?" The implicit humiliation in the comment made David's blood boil, but he controlled himself. "Life teaches that the value of a job is not in prestige, but in dignity." Of course," James waved condescendingly. "Well, in any case, my offer remains. Open, Mr. Johnson. When you want to talk seriously about numbers, give me a call." After the man left, leaving a business card on the counter, Mr. Johnson looked visibly shaken. Emily came out of the kitchen, having heard the entire conversation. "Mr. Johnson, you don't need to worry about this," she said, touching the older man's arm affectionately. "It's not that simple, dear," Mr. Johnson sighed, putting the card in his pocket. "They don't give up easily, and the offers will only get more tempting." "Don't you want to sell?" David asked, curious. "Sometimes I think it's time. I'm 62 years old. I've worked here for over 20. My children aren't interested in the business. One became a lawyer, another an engineer. The youngest is a teacher." Mr. Johnson looked around the bakery as if contemplating a lifetime. "But selling to a big chain would be like handing over the soul of the neighborhood to the sharks." That afternoon, David and Emily discussed the situation while preparing brownies for a party that weekend. "Mr. Johnson is tired," Emily said, stirring a pot with automatic movements. "He won't admit it, but I see it. He wakes up at dawn for decades, never takes proper vacations, carries everything on his shoulders. And what if he really sells? Then it's done. The chain will standardize everything, fire long-time employees like me, turn the bakery into another soulless branch." Emily paused the movement of the spoon, "And I'll have to look for another job, not knowing if they'll accept me elsewhere." The concern in her voice touched David deeply. "Emily, you're an excellent professional. Any place would be lucky to hire you. David, you know that's not how the world works for people like me. No matter how competent I am, they'll always prefer someone normal first." That night, David stayed awake thinking about the conversation. There was something about the situation that deeply troubled him. Not just the possibility of Emily losing her job, but the idea of a big chain swallowing yet another family business, another piece of the soul of New York. On Friday, an unexpected surprise changed everything. David was organizing the stock when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello? David Smith?" a female voice asked. "Yes, that's me. My name is Fernanda Rocha. I'm a journalist for Exam Magazine. I'd like to talk to you about an article I'm preparing." David felt a chill in his stomach. "About what?" About professionals who left successful careers to start over. I heard you left the management of a construction company to work in a bakery. Is that true? How did you find out about that? I have my sources, Fernanda laughed. Can I count on an interview? It's a positive piece about the courage to start over, about redefining success. David looked around the bakery, Mr. Johnson serving customers with infinite patience, Emily arranging sweets with artisanal care, the constant flow of people who were not just consumers, but neighbors and friends. Sure, he replied, but under one condition. What is it? I want you to get to know the bakery, understand what really happens here. It's not just a story about an executive who changed careers. It's about community, about values, about what really matters. The interview took place the following Tuesday. Fernanda Johnson arrived at the bakery at 8 in the morning, a woman in her 40s, elegant, but with genuine curiosity in her eyes. David had asked her to meet everyone involved, Mr. Johnson, Emily, some regular customers. So you really left a director's salary to work as a cashier? She asked while watching David serve Ms. Thompson, who insisted on explaining to the journalist how he was a polite and hard-working young man. I left a job that paid well to find work that fulfilled me, David corrected. The difference is fundamental. And financially, how are you managing? I'm earning 1/10 of what I made before, David replied honestly. But I discovered that I need much less than I thought to be happy. Fernanda watched Emily teaching a customer how to preserve homemade brownies and asked a question that caught David by surprise. And what about your relationship? I heard you're dating an employee here. I'm dating an extraordinary woman who works here, David corrected again, and she taught me that value has nothing to do with salary. The journalist spent 3 hours in the bakery, talking to everyone, observing the dynamics of the place, taking notes on how customers interacted with each other, how Mr. Johnson knew everyone's preferences, how Emily transformed simple brownies into little works of art. One last question, Fernanda said before leaving. Do you regret the decision? David looked at Emily, who was smiling while organizing the display case, at Mr. Johnson patiently explaining to a new customer about the different types of bread, at the constant flow of people who turned buying bread into social gatherings. I regret taking so long to make this decision, he replied. The article came out 2 weeks later, titled From Executive to Baker, a Lesson on True Success. It was a 2-page feature, with photos of the bakery, David working, and Emily preparing sweets. The text was respectful, interesting, and highlighted not only David's career change, but also the value of small businesses in building urban communities. Impact was immediate and unexpected. The week following the publication, the bakery was packed with curious people wanting to meet the executive who became a baker. Journalists from other outlets called asking for interviews. The foot traffic increased considerably, but it was a specific call on the Thursday after the publication that changed everything for good. David Smith? A male voice asked. That's me. My name is Antonio Silveira. I'm in the food business. I read your interview in exam and was very impressed. Thank you, David replied, unsure where the conversation would lead. I'd like to make a proposal. How about expanding this community bakery concept, transforming it into a network of artisanal bakeries that maintain the family spirit? The proposal was tempting, but David felt an internal alert. How would that work in practice? Investment for renovations, standardization of processes while maintaining artisanal quality, opening new units in other neighborhoods. You would be the managing partner, Mr. Johnson would retain ownership of this unit, and everyone would benefit. After hanging up, David felt confused. It was a growth opportunity that could solve everyone's financial problems, but something didn't sound right. He talked to Emily during lunch. And what do you think? He asked after explaining the proposal. Emily thought for a few minutes. "David, can I ask you a question that you might not like?" "Always. Why is it that every time something is going well and simple in your life, a proposal comes along to complicate everything again?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "You were happy at the construction company until your colleagues complicated things. Now you're happy here, and this expansion proposal comes up." Emily looked at him seriously. "Can't you just be happy with what you have?" David realized she had touched on something fundamental about his personality. He had always been driven by ambition, by the need to grow and achieve more. Even there, in the simplicity of the bakery, his first reaction to a growth proposal had been one of interest. "Emily, you're right. I have this habit of always wanting more. It's not wrong to want to grow," she said softly, "but sometimes growth isn't about size, it's about depth." That night, David made a decision that surprised him. He called Antonio Silveira and declined the proposal. Then he sought out Mr. Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, can I say something?" "Of course, son." "What if instead of selling the bakery or expanding, we strengthened what we already have here?" "How so?" "How about I buy a share of the business, become your partner? We could invest in improvements, maintain the family spirit, but give more structure and stability." Mr. Johnson looked at him in surprise. "Do you have money for that?" "I have some savings. It wouldn't be a huge investment, but it would be enough to modernize some equipment, renovate the kitchen, maybe hire one more person." The older man was silent for a few minutes, clearly moved. "David, that would mean you want to stay here permanently?" "It means I've found my place in the world," David replied, "and I want to help build something lasting." That night, for the first time in months, David slept with the feeling that he had made the right decision, not the most ambitious or profitable decision, but the one that made his heart feel at peace. And when he woke up the next morning, eager to get to the bakery and start another day of simple and meaningful work, he knew he had finally found what he had unknowingly been searching for, a place where he could simply be himself. 6 months had passed since David became a partner with Mr. Johnson at the bakery, and the transformation of the place was visible to anyone who knew its history. The kitchen renovation had been completed, new equipment made daily work easier, and a small area of tables had been created in the back for customers who wanted to have breakfast on site. But the most significant change was not in the facilities. It was in the family atmosphere that permeated every corner of the establishment. It was a Saturday, in December, Christmas Eve, and the bakery was bustling with special orders. Emily coordinated the production of Christmas treats with the efficiency of a maestro, while David and Mr. Johnson took turns between serving customers and organizing orders. Lily, who now spent Saturdays at the bakery, had become the official supervisor of the tray decorations, a task she took seriously with all the determination of her newly turned 9 years. "Dad, Ms. Green's tray needs more golden angels," Lily announced, critically observing the arrangement of brownies and coconut sweets that Emily had just finished. She said her granddaughter loves angels. "Lily is right," Emily agreed, smiling at the girl. "I'll grab a few more from the stock." David watched the interaction between the two with a warmed heart. Lily had adopted Emily as a mix of older sister, beloved aunt, and future stepmother, even though the subject of marriage had not yet been officially discussed between the couple. The girl spoke openly about when Emily becomes our real family, with the naturalness of children who instinctively know when something is right. At 10 in the morning, an unexpected surprise arrived. Mary and John appeared at the bakery door carrying bags and huge smiles. "We came to help with the Christmas rush," Mary announced, already tying on an apron. "Emily said you were overwhelmed with so many orders." "You didn't have to come work on your Saturday," David protested, but without much conviction. The help would be welcome. "Well, this bakery is our family now too," John replied. naturally heading to the area where Mr. Johnson organized the breads. "Isn't that right, partner?" The word partner made Mr. Johnson smile from ear to ear. In recent months, the two men had developed a genuine friendship based on shared values and mutual respect for honest work. During the morning, a small crowd formed to pick up orders. Ms. Thompson arrived to pick up 5 trays for the family gathering. Ms. Green came with her 5-year-old granddaughter to personally choose the sweets, and the office staff from the corner stopped by to pick up the traditional Friday trays, which had now become a special Christmas tradition. It was when they were at the height of the rush that a familiar figure appeared at the door. Dr. James Anderson, David's former boss. The silence that followed was palpable. Dr. James observed the busy environment, David behind the counter with an apron and genuine smile, Emily organizing sweets with artistic precision, and Lily helping as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "David," Dr. James finally said, his voice laden with an emotion that was difficult to decipher. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" David looked at Emily, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Sure, we can talk right here." I read the article in Exam magazine and other reports that came out afterward." Dr. James seemed uncomfortable, like someone not used to admitting mistakes. "I need to apologize to you." The statement surprised not only David, but everyone close enough to hear. "Dr. James." "Let me finish," the older man raised his hand. "What we did to you was unfair. Not just unfair, it was cowardly. And after reading about your new life, about what you have managed to build here, I realized how much our company lost." David took a deep breath before responding. "Dr. James, I hold no grudges. In fact, what happened led me to where I was meant to be." "That is evident." Dr. James looked around the bakery again. "I see that you are doing an amazing job here. The Exam article mentioned that you became a partner in the business." "We became a family," David replied simply. "In every sense of the word." Dr. James nodded, seeming to understand something that went beyond words. "David, I came here not only to apologize, but to make a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "Horizonte is undergoing a restructuring. We are trying to get closer to the community, develop projects that truly benefit people. I would like to hire you as a consultant for this process." The offer was generous and honorable, but David didn't need to think twice. "Dr. James, thank you for the proposal, but I already have the job of my life." "Are you sure?" "The salary would be excellent, and you could maintain your partnership at the bakery alongside." "I am absolutely sure," David gently interrupted. "I have discovered that success is not measured by the size of the salary, but by the impact you have on people's lives. And here, I see that impact every day." Dr. James nodded with what seemed to be a mix of admiration and a hint of envy. "Can I at least order some sweets for my family's dinner? My wife has heard about the special brownies from here." "With pleasure," Emily approached with a warm smile. "I'll prepare a special selection for you." After Dr. James left with his order and a business card from the bakery, Mr. Johnson approached David. "Boy, you have dream of our story." When the music ended and the guests applauded the couple, David understood that he had found much more than love. He had found his place in the world, a place where he could be exactly who he was, where his imperfections were accepted, where his dreams were shared. Years later, when telling the story of how they met to Lily as a teenager or to the children that came after, David always ended by saying, "And that's how a simple question in a cafe changed everything. Do you think I still deserve to be happy?" The answer was yes. We all deserve to be happy. We just need the courage to accept happiness when it comes, even if it's different from what we imagined. And Emily always added, "And to have the courage to fight for those we love, regardless of what others think, because true love knows no barriers, only hearts brave enough to love." sweet treats. Bakery continues to operate to this day, at the same address in Brooklyn, serving not only breads and sweets but reminding everyone who enters that family is who we choose to love, that success is measured by the happiness we create, and that the best ingredients in life are always free: love, respect, courage, and the willingness to start over as many times as necessary.